My name is Mike PYATOK. I'm principal and founder of PYATOK Architects. We are an architectural firm. We've got 35 people in downtown Oakland, and our work stretches from Seattle to San Diego. We do primarily multifamily housing for private developers, nonprofit developers doing affordable housing, and student and faculty housing for universities. So we kind of run the gamut of multifamily housing. And I was asked to speak here tonight on 4 different housing types, and we'll start with the seniors. With senior housing, there are a variety of types. There's for the ambulatory active seniors, folks who, if they're in the market rate senior housing, they start at 55 years and older. In the affordable housing, they start at 62 years and older. But they're pretty independent. You get into assisted living when folks are getting to the point where they really don't want to cook or shop for themselves anymore, and then there's even a step beyond that where people are needing more intensive health care as well. I'm showing 3 that are for the ambulatory active seniors, and they look very different, somewhat different from each other, because housing can be made to look like anything that anybody wants and can be suited to any particular community. So the upper one was in an area that aspired towards Mediterranean architecture, and the latter 2 were in districts that really like the old craftsman buildings of the time. And so we accommodated those concerns. But these are typically 1-bedroom apartments ranging in size from 525 to about 650 square feet in the affordable range. If they're in the market rate range, you add a couple hundred square feet to those sizes. And all 3 of these have open air parking. That's what allows them to achieve this affordability factor, as well as this level of density without having to build structured parking. Now, I was asked to talk about co-housing. This is an interesting phenomenon. The middle and upper middle class in the United States, borrowing it from Denmark from about 40 or 50 years ago, started coming into this country. And basically, it's a group of families who decide to develop their housing for themselves. They have a development consultant, but there's no developer who's developing it for them who will then reap profit from it. So they take the profit motive out of it, and they're able to get the housing at cost. They're more group and community oriented. While they each have their own home, they have a common house where they have a big dining hall and a kitchen where they share meals, maybe 3, 4, 5 times a week, depending upon the group. But of course, they still have their own kitchens and their own homes. This one happens to be in a repurposed building in downtown Oakland. 18 or 20 families got together to create this development on the second level of this very mixed-use inner city location. This one happens to be within a stone's throw of downtown Seattle, so it's still kind of downtown oriented. It's only about a 10-minute walk or 15-minute walk to the downtown. 28 families bought from the city a parcel of land that's about 2/3 of an acre and created their own community. They typically start out with about 4 couples who get the ball rolling, who get the project designed, and then they start attracting and advertising to get other families to become involved. In this case, and you see on the slide on the middle row, you can see that these are 3-story townhomes, and the ground floor actually has a bedroom with its own bathroom, so that the owners of those townhomes can actually rent out a space in there and help augment their income to make their homes that much more affordable. And it incorporates into the co-housing group then not only homeowners but some renters as well. They both kinds of tenants get the opportunity to be members of the organization. They do a lot of their own work. They do their own landscape. They install their own. They take care of it over the long run. So while it's a condominium form of ownership, it's a much more hands-on management style, and people really do get to know each other quite well because they are sharing much more than just the land that they live on. Here's an example of co-housing at a lower density, 15 to the acre. Each person in this case gets their own house, and these were as big as 4-bedroom units, again with a ground floor bedroom and bath for either someone aging in place or as an in-law unit or as a sublet. And that yellow building that you see in the top center slide is the common house. It's a big dining room, a nice large kitchen, and a carpentry shop, a teenage and youth playroom. So they do quite a bit together. I was asked to talk about micro units. Now, the interesting thing about micro units, they're not only just their size, the 275 to 375 more or less square feet, they actually end up housing two very opposite ends of the income spectrum. Very low income people, this is all they can afford. They get a little studio unit, and what you're looking at here is actually a subsidized lower income housing development in Palo Alto, executed by a nonprofit. They're all studio units. I think there were a couple of one-bedroom units. And you can see, though, that even at these small sizes, people can dress them up to be pretty nice, comfortable places to live. What's important, though, is because of the small unit sizes, there need to be some really generous, useful community spaces like you see in the lower right slide. That's a common room with its own little kitchen so that they can have events and stage parties and gatherings there. And they open out to a fairly large, beautiful courtyard. This particular site was surrounded by a dozen oak trees. What was unique about this is that it was fitting into a lower density neighborhood, and this is a 4-story building. But to help it fit the neighborhood on the front side, where it's most seen by the public, it scales down to 3 and 2 and even 1-story elements, so you don't really experience the full 4-story height of the building. That middle slide in the top row is of the rear courtyard surrounded by the oak trees. Now, micro units exist at the opposite end of the spectrum, high end of the spectrum, for young singles and couples who want to live usually within dense urban areas. They're really moving into an area like that to enjoy the city. They don't have much stuff yet. They're young techies, so they can easily fit into 275 to 350 square feet. They are typically developed, though, at fairly high densities and in properties in such a way that the only outdoor space is actually on the roof. But this does seem to work well for the younger crowd who wants to enjoy the inner city but not share an apartment any longer with others. I was also asked to talk about live-work housing. Artist housing, as it's sometimes referred to. And most of that housing does come in the form of repurposed older buildings, because it's less expensive to renovate those into artist housing than to build new construction. But there are a few examples of new construction as well. I showed 2 of them up there in the upper right. And the one down in the center to the left is proposed in Chicago. It's actually existing housing, but it could just as well be new housing. As I said earlier, housing can be made to look like anything, any style, any period, depending upon the tastes and desires and the wishes of the local, the social and cultural context. But what characterizes all of these buildings is that they generally are taller units inside, so they can get bigger windows and more light. But there are a variety of artist types that come under that category. There are craftspeople, there are painters and sculptors, but there are dancers, and there are writers, and there are musicians, and there are singers. So these spaces do require some additional what might be called amenity or workspaces on the ground floor or in other places of the building, such as completely soundproofed rooms for those who are in the music business, and then those kinds of spaces that need lots of light for the painters. But there's also co-working spaces where people collaborate. Artists are collaborating much more, not only performing artists, but sculptors and painters and graphic artists are doing a lot more together in the digital age, and they need spaces where they can work together. So this is a special housing type. It's usually at fairly high densities to make them affordable, and nearly all of the artist housing that I know of is in some way assisted or subsidized in order to make it pencil out, because artists generally are not making lots of money. And there is a group called Art Space that works nationally. They produce about 1,300 units in their 30 some odd years of existence. And this last one is an artist live work ownership development that was done in the community in Emeryville who participated in the design of it. They wanted to make sure that they got something that they thought would fit the neighborhood. You can see in that section in the middle band of graphics there, the section of the building shows a 2-story height space, which is the workspace, and overlooking it is the kitchen and dining area, and then living, and then on the top floor, the third floor, are 2 bedrooms and a bathroom. And a car pulls into a garage from the left-hand side, tucks into the building. And each of these homes is given a patio in the front, an outdoor workspace, but shielded from the noise of the street by a sound wall that actually has a window in it as well, with trellis work above. So there's a lot of landscape, and green thumbs of the artists who live there can also express themselves through the landscape and further enhance the appearance of the buildings. In the back there's a driveway courtyard that, because it's only serving 17 families, it also functions as a social space. The people who live there have their gatherings and parties and barbecues in that space, which also is used by the cars. And each house has a back deck on the second level where the kitchen and dining are located, overlooking that central shared space. Those 2 photographs in the center row on the right give a sense of what the streetscape is like as you walk down the sidewalk. You're not confronted with a 3-story building. You're really confronted with just the 1-story wall of the courtyard that's overgrown with the bougainvillea. So it softens the feel of the street without it having to be that typical industrial live work that you associate with artists.